Welcome to the Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? Let's proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans, to our Week 12 Steelers preview. I'm your host, Jim Sella, here on the spread. Johnny Parlay taking another week off. I gave Parlay the week off this week because he's still cleaning up 5-year-old blood from when I chopped my finger off in his kitchen. So good luck to you, Parlay, if you can get all the blood out of there. If not, just don't commit any crimes in your kitchen because I don't want to be held accountable. Speaking of crimes, the Tennessee Titans quarterback play last week versus the Steelers was a crime, if you ask me. Marcus Mariota throwing 4 picks for the Titans, helping lead the Steelers basically to victory, 40-17 for Pittsburgh. It's the first time Pittsburgh's crossed the 30-point threshold this year, first time they crossed the 40-point threshold this year. Very exciting game, Thursday night game. You usually don't get too many good Thursday night games going on in the NFL these days, so it was refreshing there. Now, the biggest story coming out of Pittsburgh this week is the 4-game PED suspension for the Steelers' right tackle, Marcus Gilbert. Gilbert has been battling some injuries this year. He's been in and out of the lineup. Says he took something he shouldn't have, that he didn't actually take steroids. It was just something, to aid in his recovery, and it actually happened to fall on the banned substance list, which is usually everybody's excuse whenever they get popped for PEDs. I know most people are going to sit here and say, oh, it's the Steelers, oh, here they go doing steroids again, just like in the 70s. It is what it is. People are going to hate. It doesn't really matter. Especially as soon as the article came out about Gilbert, all the comments underneath, how the NFL and Goodell take care of the Steelers, and they never do anything ill to the Steelers, and blah, 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 blah. That's just a bunch of crap. The other half of the Steeler fans think Goodell picks on the Steelers all the time and uses us to set an example, which makes zero sense because the Rooneys are on the competition committee, and if you are going to go and upset one of the owners on the compensation committee, then you're not going to get as much money when your current deal is being worked right now that Jerry Jones is trying to block. So there's no way Goodell would go out and personally try to upset these owners that control how much money he gets paid per year. So anybody who thinks that, you're just a complete moron. Things happen in the NFL, and people get suspended. No, I don't agree with all of Goodell's suspensions, especially most of them, really. But my point is, I don't think that he actually goes and looks to hurt the Steelers or wants to hurt the Steelers, because it just wouldn't make any sense. Bottom line is, Gilbert should have been paying attention to what he was putting in his body. He didn't, whether he did it on purpose or not. Now he's out for 4 games. Chris Hubbard's in. The biggest thing for me here is how this will affect the running game. The Steelers have been called a running team this year with all the struggles they have in the passing game, minus, I guess, last week versus the Titans. But the Steelers are only 20th in the NFL right now in rushing yards per game at a little over 102 yards per game. So I don't really know how you can consider them a running team whenever they're 8th in passing yards, but 20th in rush yards. Yeah, they like to run the ball to control the clock. Yeah, they like to run the ball to control certain situations. And they've been running the ball very well this year. But to just come out and outright call them a running team is a bit of a mistake or an overstatement, if you ask me. Quite honestly, they're a defensive team, is what they are this year. And they're 14th in points per game offensively, 11th in yards, 8th in passing yards, and 20th in rushing yards. Defensively, 2nd in points per game, 4th in yards allowed, 3rd in passing yards, and 8th in rushing yards. And that 8th comes after getting gouged by Jacksonville and Chicago. So if they would have actually been able to hold pat in those games, they'd be even a little bit higher. So this is a defensive team. They're winning games with defense. They did win last week with offense, scoring 40 points. But guess what? The defense picked off 4 passes. That's what set up the offense to score all these points. When Dash was still on with me, we would talk a lot about how the Steelers' offense never actually came close to that 30 points per game margin. It was because the defense was scoring points and the defense was getting turnovers to set the offense up for these short fields. Yeah, a team has to work together. Offense and defense has to work together to be successful. And anytime your defense gets a takeaway and gives an offense a short field, that's a good thing. It doesn't matter if you're a terrible offense or a great offense. They coincide. But So many people talk about how vaunted this Steelers defense has been over the years and how great they've been, when in reality, without the help of the defense, the offense has definitely struggled a little bit. The other big story coming into this game versus Green Bay is the hamstring injury for Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju is second on the team, I believe, in receptions, touchdowns, and yards, quite honestly, behind Antonio Brown. He's definitely stepped in as that second receiving threat opposite Brown for Ben Roethlisberger. He's kind of stepped over Martavis Bryant. I know Bryant is still getting the start a lot of these games, but the playing time has been pretty much even, if not swayed towards Juju's favor. So that's an injury worth watching as the week progresses. It's been reported as just a minor injury, so hopefully Juju can get some rest. He doesn't have to ride his bike back and forth to work anymore, so driving a car will help that hamstring heal a little quicker. Mitchell and McDonald still hurt. I believe Mitchell had a knee injury or an ankle injury. McDonald, it was a soleus injury for Mitchell. That's what it was. It's right by your Achilles. And McDonald was injured a few weeks back, and he may still not play in this game against Green Bay. McDonald was expected to take a bigger step up in this offense, especially starting. Obviously won't be able to do that while injured. Steeler returning from injury is Cam Sutton. Sutton I think he actually was battling some hamstring issues early in camp as well. They put him on the short-term IR. He came off IR a few weeks back, was in practice. I think it's about 3 weeks before you actually have to be activated onto the roster. So with Marcus Gilbert being out for 4 games, the Steelers didn't have to release anybody or move anybody from the roster. They just activated Sutton and let him take Gilbert's roster spot. It'll be interesting to see where Cam Sutton plays. Some of the comments from Coach Tomlin, he said he likes where Sutton's game is at. He likes his above-the-neck game, meaning that he has the mental capacity to do it. But Artie Burns is playing pretty well. Cody Sensabaugh stepped in and played well in place of Joe Hayden last week. Mike Hilton in the slot's definitely playing well. Couple sacks and picks this year. So I don't really know where Cam Sutton actually fits in. He did return punts while he was in college, so that's something the Steelers could try to mix in, although I don't think you'll see it this week. I don't think they want to rush anybody into that position. They've been trying to find somebody other than Antonio Brown for years now to take over that spot. They haven't been able to do it. I don't think they're going to throw Sutton back there right away, say, here, you haven't played football in months or almost a year now since college. Go ahead and return some punts, but don't fumble. Don't see that happening. Will most likely be Antonio Brown again this week. Maybe you'll see Sutton move into that role as he gets a little more involved with the defense and with the team in general. I'm excited to see Sutton get in and play, though. He's got good size. This is a guy they could definitely use to mix things up. Gives them a little bit more depth with the injury of Joe Hayden. So it makes it a little easier for us Steeler fans to swallow that injury. Obviously, Hayden was brought in to try to shore up that defense, and him and Artie Burns have played so well on the outside. So hopefully Sutton will be able to step in and, add some extra zest to this Steelers defense. I mentioned a few minutes ago that Juju could be out for this game with that hamstring injury. If he is out, Martavis Bryant will step into the starting lineup again and get the majority of the snaps opposite of Antonio Brown. My question to you fans is, do you think Martavis Bryant can do this? I know we've seen him do it in the past. He had so many, I don't even remember what it was, 20 touchdowns in his first 21 games or somewhere around there. This guy was a beast through his first 21 games. But ever since the suspension, the long time off, he's really struggled this year to get back to where he was. Doesn't even have 300 yards receiving, I don't think, this year. Maybe just 1 touchdown. So Martavis came out and said the other day that, I'm paraphrasing here, but he came out the other day and said, he's done complaining, basically. It is what it is. He's frustrated with himself. He expected to be able to come in and just produce like he was right away. Didn't think there would be any drop-off in production. Obviously, there's been a huge drop-off in production, which is part of the reason why Juju has been able to pass Bryant up. But hopefully, Bryant's getting his head right. He's getting his body right, getting used to football. We're a little over halfway through the season now, so he's had some experience. he should be able to get his game back to close to where it was before. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be a 20 yards per catch receiver like he was before the suspension this year, but he definitely could come back and help contribute. The one thing I still don't get is why they keep trying to run end arounds with Martavis Bryant. The dude has great speed, but he's so big and tall and lanky, I wouldn't exactly call him shifty. You want to use receivers similar to Antonio Brown's size. I'm not saying use Antonio Brown because I don't want him getting smoked by a linebacker or a D lineman. But you use somebody in that skill set to run those end arounds. Not a 6'6" receiver who is probably the tallest guy out there on the field at the time, maybe a little bit shorter than Big Ben. But come on, man, you don't have this big, tall, lanky guy trying to run behind the line of scrimmage and juke people and get. You just let Bryant go downfield and be the guy he's supposed to be. And if you let him do that, he'll be able to help this offense at least a little bit. But fans, I want to know what you think. Hit us up at bet_the_spread. Hit me up at betjimthewin. You can comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/betthespread. You can just comment right below here in the YouTube comment section. What do you think Martavis Bryant can do if Juju is out? Do you think this guy can get it going again this week? Or do you think it's going to be the same old Martavis Bryant that we've seen all season? Uninterested and quite honestly doesn't look like he's playing as hard as he could. Moving on to the Packers a little bit here. Everybody knows Aaron Rodgers is still out. Brent Hundley is in there at quarterback. Hundley has struggled mightily this year. 2 touchdowns, 7 interceptions since he took over as a starting quarterback for Green Bay. Just a quick, interesting side note. Our resident athletic trainer, Brandon DeSantis, actually worked with Hundley whenever he was in college at UCLA. He actually worked with Anthony Barr, too, the Minnesota Vikings player who hit Aaron Rodgers and broke his collarbone and put him out. So Brandon knows the guy who hurt Rodgers, and he also knows the guy who replaced Rodgers. I just kind of find that interesting. I'm sure nobody else gives a crap. But anyway, Brett Hundley struggled mightily. Green Bay's offense struggled mightily. Ty Montgomery was expected to be a star running back for them this year. He's battled some injuries. Jordy Nelson, their star receiver, he really hasn't been able to get it going since Rodgers was hurt. I did read an article, I think it was late last night, that said Jordy wasn't going to pressure Hundley into trying to get him the ball more. He said that Hundley has enough stuff on his plate, enough stuff to worry about, that he doesn't want to pressure the young guy into trying to think too much back there. He wants him to be able to just get into a rhythm, get the ball to whoever he can, just so the Packers can win some football games. And now for a receiver to come out and say that, that's pretty interesting because as we all know, most receivers are prima donnas and they want the ball on every drive, every snap, every play. And they think that if they're not getting the ball on every play, that the team has absolutely no chance at winning. So kudos to you, Jordy, for not coming out and being a giant douchebag and whining and crying about not getting enough touches like most of the other receivers in the NFL do. There's not really a whole lot of weapons, and I hesitate when I say that about the Packers offense because we've all seen them play so well. Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Ty Montgomery played well last year. They had Jared Cook in the lineup last year at tight end. This year they decided to go with Martellus Bennett. And then once Rodgers got hurt, Bennett got very disinterested with the team, started complaining about an injury that he said he had, and then he started talking about wanting to retire at the end of the year, even though he signed a 3-year deal. So they ended up cutting him. He went and signed with the New England Patriots. Not even a week later, he was already playing in their game whenever he was telling the Packers that he was too injured to play with them. So, luck you, dude. You gave up on your team. It just doesn't show good character to me. So, I'm guessing the Packers are happy that Bennett's out of there because he was probably just becoming a cancer to that locker room. And that offense doesn't need any more help being terrible because they're absolutely terrible right now. I don't think anybody expected the offense to be good without Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think anybody expected Hundley to play this bad. And I'm surprised that Green Bay hasn't tried to go out and do something at the quarterback position. No, I'm not saying Colin Kaepernick because I think that dude's garbage, but I'm surprised they didn't go out and pick up a savvy veteran somewhere along the line or try to make a trade. I did hear reports that they were interested in Brian Hoyer when he was released by the 49ers, but Mike McCarthy, the Packers head coach, came out and said that that was bogus, that it was just media driven. But who knows in today's world, because everybody lies about everything, and we honestly don't know the truth about anything until it gets exposed and people come out and say, no, I didn't do that. So I'm sure we'll find out someday when Brian Hoyer writes a tell-all book that nobody will read. This Packers defense, I don't want to call them bad, but they're not exactly good either. They're kind of a middle-of-the-pack defense, and with an offense as bad as they've had right now with no Aaron Rodgers, they really need to step it up. They are 18th in points allowed, 18th in defensive yards allowed, 18th in passing yards allowed, and 11th in rushing yards allowed. The Steelers' offense should be able to come out and have a pretty successful game against this defense. The Packers, they don't really get to the quarterback that well. Big Ben should have a lot of time. Yeah, you're not going to have Marcus Gilbert over there, but Hubbard should be able to do well enough in pass protection. It's the running game that scares me a little bit for the Steelers without Marcus Gilbert. So this Steelers offense should be able to take advantage of this Packers defense, which really hasn't been that good for the last couple years. And if they could have put a better defense out there with Aaron Rodgers, they definitely would have been able to win another Super Bowl since the last time they won when they beat Pittsburgh. I believe it was back in 2010. So I'm expecting I guess an offensive game out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I expect them to put up a decent amount of points, and I really expect this defense to just keep doing what they're doing. They're somewhere in the top 3 in sacks. I believe they're in the top 5 in interceptions, QB pressures. I mean, this defense is young and fast, and they're really getting to the quarterback. Teams thought they could be exposed after the Joe Hayden injury, but Cody Sensabaugh stepped in last week. Now it's only a 1-game sample, so things could still go wrong. But I really think the defense for the Steelers can really slow down or stop pretty much completely that Packer offense. And I think the Steelers offense should be able to almost move the ball at will here against this Packer defense. Every game's different. Every week is different. So things could happen. Lev Bell could get hurt. AB could get hurt. Big Ben could get hurt. Knock on wood. I don't want any of that to happen. But those things definitely change the outlook of a football game in an instant whenever they happen. But barring any crazy catastrophic injuries, this should be a pretty easygoing game for Pittsburgh. You're at home. You're against basically a rookie quarterback, a guy who's really getting his first look at the NFL this year. They should just feast on him. I mean, if you pick off Marcus Mariota 4 times, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, you should be able to do at least a similar thing to Brett Hundley in that defense or that offense there in Green Bay. Like I said earlier, 2 TDs for Hundley, 7 INTs. Not very good. He's just, it looks like the game's moving too fast for this kid. And with the speed of this Steeler defense, that's definitely going to be an issue for him and definitely going to be something that helps Pittsburgh win this football game. As far as our keys to victory go, usually Parlay and I will both give ours. He's not here this week, so I'm just going to go ahead with mine. My keys to victory really are to score early and put Brett Hundley in a hole. 2 TDs, 7 INTs, I keep saying it. Make this guy play from behind. Do not, I repeat, do not let the Packers get up 14-0 early in this game by throwing interceptions or fumbling the ball or some stupid mistake that you definitely shouldn't make. Don't do that, please, because if you can just get up by 1 or 2 scores on this Packer team, they're not going to be able to come back on you. The offense just isn't good enough. Hundley's not a good enough quarterback. You got to score early. Get points on your first drive, get points on your second drive, and then just continually put pressure on the quarterback. And it really should be a pretty easy victory for the Steelers. If they're not turning the ball over, especially given the Packers' offense a short field, there's no way this Packer offense should be able to drive down the field multiple times, 70, 80 yards against this Steelers defense and put up enough points to win this football game. But hey, stranger things have happened. We've seen it happen. We've seen the Steelers in this position lose to teams they had no business losing to. Hopefully that trend is over this year. They dodged a game like that in Indianapolis a few weeks ago. So let's hope we don't have a repeat of something like that. It is a primetime game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger, all play so well on primetime, or perform so well on primetime, however you want to put it. I really just don't think Green Bay is going to come out and be able to do anything. So, as I say that, I'll give you my official prediction. Man, 40 points for the Steelers last week. I don't know if they get to 30 again this week. I think they can get to 30. I just don't know if they will. See, I guess I will give it 27-14 Pittsburgh Steelers victory. I think Green Bay can get a touchdown somewhere in the first half. Every team gets them every once in a while. It happens. Probably get another garbage time touchdown, towards the end of the game whenever Pittsburgh's up big and the defense is kind of just coasting to a victory. I say all this hoping that I'm not wrong, with a grain of salt, I guess, is how I want to put it. Because, like I said, we've seen them come out and have some stinkers against teams that they should beat. And let's just hope that that doesn't happen again this week against Green Bay. So that's it. Keys to victory. Put pressure on Hundley, score early, force the Packers to play from behind. Official prediction. Pittsburgh Steelers 27, Green Bay Packers 14. Steelers move to 9-2, inch closer and closer to that number 1 seed in the AFC. And that game against the New England Patriots just means more and more every single week. Fans, any questions or comments? As I said, hit us up on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Hit me up on Twitter at betjimthewin. Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/betthespread. Come back to YouTube, click subscribe, share it with your friends. 20 subscribers last week, 10,000 views in 2 days. Let's try to beat that record this week. Ball.